Hey everyone, this is Jonathan from EthStaker. Welcome to the community call, number 51. We have today a number of us from the EthStaker crew, myself, Remy Roy, Torsten, Henny, and Sam. And then we also we're welcoming today the Grandine team with Solius from the crew there. So um, Grandine is a consensus layer client with Ethereum, and they've been working on some things lately, and we want to understand what's happening there, give the community some insights into what they're building and what's available to stakers there. So and then we'll allow some time for Q&A also. So um, why don't we go ahead and get into it? Solius, thanks for coming, and we wanted to first with just let you introduce yourself, and um, and then we can get into a little bit of an overview on what you're working on at Grandine.
Yeah, so hey everyone, it's a pleasure to be invited in this EthStaker community. Yeah, I'm Solus. I work on Grandine for now. I think it's almost 6 years. So we started to work in 2019. It was kind of a side project at the beginning, where we, after this ICO madness in 2018, we were looking for some interesting project, some serious interesting project to work on. And before we didn't have that much of experience with blockchain nodes, and we thought that it would be quite interesting uh, to start some serious project in a blockchain space. And about that time, the beacon chain idea and specifications were developed, and we thought that it's a great thing to try this. And I think initially we even we didn't know the actual outcome, and it wasn't even clear will we deliver the client or not. And that's why for quite some long time we were able to survive in this let's say closed source path, or just developing in a stealth mode. And after a while, actually, after a couple of years of development, we saw that we are doing quite interesting work that is interesting for ourselves, and the product, this consensus layer client, is something that could be valuable for the community. And if I remember correctly, in 2021, we released a binary version of the client, and it was kind of a first time when we came live, and a bit of people figured out that there is actually a sixth client under development. And then during a couple of next years, we tried to improve the code base, and we started to look for ways to open source it. So the key thing why it was a closed source from the beginning, because the funding was complicated at that time for the projects such as a beacon chain clients. And we went with a commercial funding that had an obligation of revenue, and at least in the previous years, we didn't see any way um, how to monetize the client in an open source way, and fulfill the obligations that we had, these commercial obligations. And only later, I would say, after a few years of development, we started to see that open source clients actually are generating revenue in some interesting ways. For example, a lot of teams are now like a LiDAR node operators and so on. So there is a kind of revenue model for the open source clients, and we started to look for ways to open source, and to give that thing we developed to the community, and at the same time to fulfill the obligations that we had for the funding, right? So this, I think, this particular side of the project was quite bumpy. But we finally open sourced last year, a year ago, and I think yeah, that's when we got way more recognized in the community. And actually, this last year was really interesting because after open sourcing, we got invited at Kenya Interop event where we met all the teams that builds consensus and execution layer client and some other teams like EF research teams and so on. So this was quite interesting. And yeah, and after that, there is no after it's open source, there is no any excuses or barriers, and we can just be next to the other consensus clients in the list. So I think that's yeah that was a quite big transformation for us, and here we are with the stable release 1.0, which we released last week, and yeah, we think we already have some users, and we think that from now on the adoption likely will be much easier than it was until the stable release. Yeah, so I hope this intro helped a bit. So I'm happy to hear any questions for the things that I didn't cover.
Yeah, I mean, it that obviously part of the timing of why we thought it was interesting to do this call now is because you guys,
Mhm.
had the release, and so it seems like um, a good time to shine some light on it for the community to come take a look at it. So I guess maybe just like an orienting question for me is like, you know, who you built this for, like what the target audience is. I know my understanding is it's built in Rust, and
Yeah,
so that comes with like resource efficiency capabilities
yeah.
that, I mean, just from a high level, my understanding. But if you have like more insight into that, and I know I know Lighthouse is built in Rust. So what are you guys kind of doing that's unique from that, and like your approach, like what's unique about that?
Yeah, so our approach, and actually this is kind of was a driving idea from the beginning, and later, of course, it transformed. But the core idea at the beginning was to make a faster client. And at least at the beginning, the fastest client meant um, fast state transition function. And like in the early benchmarks, our state transition function was maybe around 3 times faster than the fastest other client available. And yeah, at the beginning, I think it was very important because there was no checkpoint sync where you were able to simply make a checkpoint sync, which among all the clients now, I think takes a couple of minutes or so. But back then, the speed was slightly, I mean, understanding of the performance was slightly different than it is now. So yes, I think we still have this target and this goal to have a fast client. However, at the same time, now we not only want to be a really fast client, we also want to be a very stable client that also uh, gives like a best rewards for the stakers. So the speed is actually is I would say for the staker, the speed, like the absolute top performance in terms of speed is not that interesting for the staker. For the staker, it's more about stability and rewards performance. So I would say we try to cover everything, and one of the key elements is that the client is really fast. So I think um, this opens an interesting question: what is the target audience? And the thing is, if you have a fast client, then you actually fit both main target group. So I would say that these groups are institutional stakers, and then there are home stakers, right? So if you have a fast client, it works for home stakers because home stakers usually are on quite limited hardware. Uh, Maybe not all of them, but usually they try to run on some previously even on Raspberry Pis. Now I think it's a bit better hardware, but still quite a low resource hardware. So I think uh, we both fit the home stakers because the client is fast and it doesn't demand a lot of resources. And at the same time, it works well for institutional stakers, especially those who are staking like a large stakes and they have a huge amount of validators, because our client is optimized for running a large number of validators per machine. So, for example, we intentionally test on really old machines. We have a couple of machines here in the office, which has a like 10 years old CPU, and it runs, one machine runs 5,000 validators with local key stores on Holesky. Then another machine runs the old machine with 8 gigabytes of RAM. It runs 15,000 of Holesky validators with Web3 signer hosted on the different machines. So essentially, uh, I think the client, because it's fast and it's optimized, it fills both the needs of home stakers and also institutional stakers.
Okay. Just seeing a question here. We can with this one from Hanny around like building it in Rust, having a community, with Lighthouse already in Rust. Like, does it make it so that contributors are able to be found because there's that existing Rust talent pool, or especially with consensus client experience, or is it challenging because there's you're like competing for contributors? Like, what is that experience like in terms of getting that kind of contributions, or are you guys building most of it? Yeah, I guess is that the essence of the question, Hanny?
Yeah, so I think yeah, there are multiple angles in this question. So one thing that, yeah, the core team is the existing team that was developing the client for a few years. However, I think last year we started to experiment with external contributors. So, for example, there was this guy Hangling, which was Ethereum Fellowship Program member, and he was developing a PeerDAS functionality. And it was, so far it's a quite interesting experience. He joined the team as a half-time person, and he also joined the Protocol Guild. So I think it's because the team is quite small, and we, we even, I would say, we even maybe don't need a lot of contributors. So there is no kind of a huge need for a lot of people, to join the team. So I think it happens really naturally. So some people that like the project, that like Rust and like Consensus Client, they experiment with the code. They see, do they like it? I mean, do they actually deliver something? Because you may like the project and you may like the idea, but it's just too complicated to understand the code base or whatever. But I think that yeah, it just naturally attracts the people that are interested in such development. So I would say the key element is that there is no need for a lot of new people, and the world is quite large. So so I mean, naturally, sometimes right people just come, and that's how it works.
Okay, nice. Um, I guess one question that kind of bubbles up for me is like you talked about uh, you know, efficiency, speed, and also stability. And I think when stakers are thinking, we've seen this as a theme over the last months and even longer about stakers wanting to feel like they've got runway for increases in things like hard disk space or other hardware requirements, or also even bandwidth usage. Like, are you guys thinking about those? Like, do you guys have edges in any of those areas that stakers are kind of like top of mind for stakers as they look over the next, year plus with the way the protocol could develop to require more out of what they can do with their clients? Um, because I think you mentioned about syncing the chain, and speed and then stability with operations once you've
Yeah,
synced the chain. But I'm just curious if like the client addresses anything with those other components like hardware, bandwidth usage, um,
yeah,
anything like and along those lines.
yeah. So I think we are not like too paranoid about trying to cut, you know, any excess usage of bandwidth or memory or so, but we use a slightly different method. We just try to put a huge amount of validators per old machine, and we just want to try to make it work well. So this indirectly helps us to make a client that is relatively good in terms of resource usage. So I think, yeah, we don't target that directly, but the process that we use has this outcome that we are quite good in terms of the resource usage. So so this is one thing. The another thing, of course, is the language. You I mean, it's pretty clear for a lot of folks that Rust code usually is really efficient. So I would say we also win in that department a bit. So yeah, I would say we likely are not like a least resource client, but we shouldn't be the worst here. So likely somewhere in the middle, I think. And of course we can come back to this topic once we see if there will be a really high need for like completely fully efficient in terms of resource usage, then I think we can come back to this question. However, there is one thing. So usually efficiency, it doesn't come from nowhere, and you often can see some shortcuts that some more efficient clients tries to do. So for example, you can just maybe it's not a very good example, but for example, you can just cut a part of the attestations that let's say you cannot handle it now, but you may handle later when you will have a target state for that. And some client may just drop these attestations because there isn't that much of the value apart from, having a better view of which fork you should follow. But a part of these relatively small things, especially in a network that works correctly, like in a healthy network, you can essentially cut some quite heavy stuff, which will lead to quite good savings on the resource usage. But at the same time, your client will be in, at least from the specification perspective, your client likely will work less correctly, but at the same time, likely average staker will not even notice that. So there are trade-offs. I mean, you can make a really quite efficient client that works really well on a stable, especially stable network that we have on the mainnet, but at the same time, it will be in some sense slightly incorrect in terms of specification or so. So yeah, so hopefully this gives some view on this.
Yeah, it's interesting because it makes me think of when I first heard about the rated effectiveness score, I think it is. Um,
Hmm.
uh, because before I learned about that score, there was, you could look at things like beacon chain and whatnot. And so there's like different ways of measuring all these like effectiveness. And um, it's interesting to know like where you might see that, or, if you're saying it's like you know, a princess and the pea type situation where it's like you notice the pea or you don't, it's as a staker, you might not notice like little differences in
Yeah,
attestation effectiveness and things like that. So it's interesting to understand that, there's nuance there to how that's the way these things are built. Um, Maybe we can go to this question here from Luca from the YouTube chat, which is like back to the questions around Rust and um, you know, is there maybe the question being like, is there any overlap or dependencies between the code bases of other clients that would impact someone's thinking about client diversity? Because obviously that's one of the big reasons why someone might want to consider another client. And if there's like another Rust option,
yeah,
is it like very separate in those ways, or is there dependencies or overlaps that people should
yeah.
be aware of?
So obviously the Rust itself is a overlap, and another big overlap is like the general purpose crates, for example, like a database, embedded databases, or JSON libraries, or HTTP API libraries, or whatever. Historically, we tried to especially in the cases where it's possible to pick where there is, let's say, two competing crates that does a similar thing. We tried to choose a different one from the one that Lighthouse uses. Uh, However, I think there is over time, the Rust ecosystem is maturing, and often you can see only a single like a best option for particular task. For example, for networking, there is a Rustlib P2P library, which I don't think there is a good competitor for that. So we overlap with Lighthouse on the part of the networking stack. So on the higher stack, we have our own implementation of like sinkers and stuff like that. On the lower part of the stack, we overlap with Lighthouse. So I think that's maybe yeah, like a general purpose crates, and and the lower stack of the networking. This is where you can see the overlap. The rest of the client is a completely original implementation, and this happened because we went with three states from the beginning, and the Lighthouse didn't have this approach from the beginning, and they shifted to this approach only, I don't know, like a year or two. I don't remember exactly, but some time ago. However, because the code base was built on these two completely different approaches, it's I mean the internals are completely different. So I think yeah, if unless you are worried about the networking stack, the implementations are very different.
Cool. Um, Maybe we can go, Torsten, with those questions around the open sourcing.
Actually, before I get to that,
Sure.
yeah, can I ask some questions about what actions can people take if they want to try this? So typically people already have their keys, right?
Mhm.
If the keys in Web3 signer, then I'm assuming this is pretty simple. They don't have to move the keys. There's no slashing risk. Just connect Grandin and try it out.
Yep.
Um, if they have the keys in a validator client already and they're feeling nervous and they don't want to move that, how much
Yep.
cross testing are you doing with other teams, validator clients against your consensus layer client?
Yeah, so ourselves, I think we only do we have a one large deployment of voucher. So
Mm-hmm.
as long as you are running vouch, I think it's super simple to try Grandine. You just need to add a Grandine beacon node API address to vouch, and
Sure.
that's all, and it just works. For the rest of the clients, I know that if Panda Ops they they have this matrix of like a compatibility matrix, and I don't know how often they update that, but at least as far as I know, unless there is some recent update, we should be compatible with all the validator clients. So yeah, so but it's not fully guaranteed, yeah, because it's something that that external ops team is checking. So
Right.
hopefully they check it quite often. But yeah, you can. I think yeah, if especially on the testnet, you can just try to swap. Your current beacon node with Grandine beacon
Mm-hmm.
node and keep your existing validator client. If you are not using Web 3 Signer, and then see if you are happy with the rewards and you don't see any errors, then likely everything is working well. You know.
Excellent. And maybe in the YouTube description, we can link this compatibility matrix, right, so people
Yeah.
can look it up. I
Yeah.
did have a question about the open sourcing process. Really, a two-parter. You started about a year ago after being closed source for
Yeah.
about, what is it, 4.5 years or so. What was the most challenging part of going open source, and what was the most rewarding part of going open source?
I think that the most challenging part was to understand that there is likely there is no model, the funding model for the um, closed source client, and we somehow need to solve the financial obligations that we had.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was the key thing that the open sourcing didn't happen earlier. Yeah, and we were convinced that this open source model works only after we started to see that actually the other clients are generating revenue kind of indirectly
Right.
from the client. Yeah. So I think that was the biggest challenge, biggest kind of challenge, and biggest mindset change or so. And the second part, the most rewarding thing is like I think it was the whole shift of our development of and the acceptance of the project. So we just became like the same level thing as the other open source clients, and this is truly rewarding because we are included in a lot of activities, events, and so on, and all of this is really fun to be part of it. Yeah, I think that was a truly rewarding moment.
Yes, because the Ethereum is built on this open source ethos for the most part. Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Um, I think one comment from me, I've looked around a little bit as to what guides exist for deploying Grandin. I haven't seen anything yet on the systemd side from Somer Esad or CoinCashew. They might exist. Remy, is this yet in ETH Wizard? Do you know?
Not
Okay, and it's been supported in ETH Docker since it went open source last year. So people who use ETH Docker can just stick in Grandin YAML if they want to use it with the built-in keys, or Grandin-CL only YAML if they have a different validator client and just want to connect it to a Grandin consensus layer client.
Yeah, this is actually you touched a quite interesting thing because this wave of you know consensus layer client marketing, let's say, which these tutorials, configs and so on was part of this marketing movement, and we kind of missed it because we were closed source at that time.
Right.
So it's a bit tricky, uh, but at the same time, I think it could be that a lot of these tutorials, I'm not actually sure, but could be that at least some of these are quite outdated, likely, because it's expensive to to maintain these tutorials because somebody needs to check all the changes in the clients and update the command line options and so on. So I think we can probably maybe reach some of these authors and ask to make a guide for Grandine client, or um, I don't know, maybe write our own and own update and send to these clients. So I think if you have ideas and if you have resources to help there, yeah, let us know. It could be interesting to update these popular guides.
Perfect.
It, it definitely seems like a season to be updating guides because anytime there's a hard fork with
Yeah,
new capabilities, and I feel like Pectra has a few of those things that stakers are really interested in. So I know we've got some things in motion around that that we're aware of, but hopefully to be able to share soon. Um, and so with this release, just for the 1.0,
yeah,
is it correct that is that ready for Pectra in terms of
yeah.
the Molesky, or for that's kind of like you guys are on top of that?
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
so it kind of also part of the small marketing because in a lot of places you can see like EF blog post or somewhere else you can see a list of the clients with versions that supports these testnets, and yeah, and we wanted to get into these lists, and that's why we released 1.0. So there are configs and Pextra support and configs in place for the Sepoli and Holesky networks. So yeah, it's ready.
Very good. So I see one more question here on our agenda, and then we'll see whether we have a little bit of time still for YouTube questions. On DevCon in Thailand, Bangkok, Justin Drake introduced this idea of the beam chain, basically rolling up a whole bunch of aggressive changes to the consensus layer and a whole lot of cleaning up of tech debt, right, into one big change that comes maybe years down the line while regular hard forks are happening. What's your take on the beam chain, and would you consider building a beam chain client?
Yeah, so it's a very interesting topic, and likely I can talk for another half hour about that. So, so I'll try to, I'll try to squeeze to squash in a few minutes. So yeah, so we are very interested in that, primarily because I myself very interested in cryptography, and I have quite good background in cryptography, and one of the goals of Beam chain is actually to snarkify the consensus layer state transition function. And
Mhm.
this is really exciting thing, and the current idea is to leverage the ZK VMs, which is another very interesting technology that allows to generate proofs for arbitrary programs written in Rust or in some other languages. So essentially, you don't need to make ZK circuits manually, and that's very tiring and very like a very buggy thing to do. So yeah, I think it's a very exciting. However, I think that in order to ship this much faster, because the current estimate is like a 5 years, and
Yeah.
as we know, estimates are estimates. So so it's like I mean, thumb of rule of thumb is like you need to at least 2x the estimate. So,
Right.
so I think it's a bit tricky with the shipping to the market, and that's what we are going to push forward. Is actually we will try to experiment with the existing beacon chain. Applying the ideas that the beam chain is trying to introduce, so some of these ideas are quite simple. So let's replace SHA-2 with Poseidon 2,
Hmm.
and it will become way more friendly to proving systems, So I think that it will be very interesting to see the outcome of the beam chain. We definitely will build a beam chain client. However, in parallel, we will try to push the ideas of the beam chain faster to the beacon, to the existing beacon chain, because it could take. I'm afraid that it could take even more than 5 years to merge into beam chain, and people would be way more excited with at least some of the features of the beam chain at the existing beacon chain, because we can just use it much faster than after the merge to the beam chain.
Thank you. Do we have other follow-up questions? Do we have questions from YouTube?
One question maybe that I have stemming from that, because it's like, okay, you have the consensus layer client, this interesting discussion about the beam chain clients and what can happen there. But and I know a lot of teams will run or build like an execution layer client also. So like, is that something you've thought about or would consider building one? I know there's already some,
So
but or if that even
yeah,
makes sense. But it's obviously like more like a portfolio of clients is something that other client teams do. But yeah, curious thoughts there.
I think it's so there are a few things. So we're thinking about that, but there are a few things. So one thing that it takes a lot of years to build a competitive client. I mean, it's proven already. I mean, some new clients are really struggling with adoption, and one of the reason is that you really need a lot of years to mature the client until it becomes a really stable and actually like a true competitor to the other clients that were developed for 5 or 10 years or whatever, especially for execution layer. So yeah, so I think this is one of the reasons why we don't look at that super actively now. Another reason that there is already now, I think there is already at least two clients in Rust. The one is Reth and another one is by Lambda. I forgot the name, like EthRex or something
Hmm.
like that. So there is already, let's say, a couple of clients. So then, because in any case we would like to build that in Rust, because we are truly in love with that language, and we don't see any kind of option, or at least from our point of view, we don't see a better option than Rust for the node development. So I think, yeah, we kind of have this idea in the background, but at the same time we know that it will take many years and huge efforts to deliver that. So I think it's something to consider. But at the same time, yeah, if we would find a way to fund it, and yeah, and if we find the right people, dedicated people to do that, then I think why not? It's overall it's a really great asset to have, especially when on Ethereum. Um, like the hot part is actually the execution layer. I mean, this
Hmm.
is like a user facing part, and the consensus layer client, as we already see, so it proof of work was replaced with proof of stake, and now the beacon chain could be, maybe it will be in 5 years or so, it will be replaced by beam chain, but so far no one replaced the execution layer part,
Yeah.
which is running for so many years, and there is even no
Unless we
plans.
consider EOF to be a very gentle replacement of the execution layer part.
Well, the functionality, it's still like the user-facing part. It's still
Still the same.
essentially the same,
Yeah.
So, so, so I think, but it makes sense, because once there is a high adoption on the user-facing part, this is something you cannot replace easily. Yeah, I mean, it's
And
usually
yeah.
cannot replace, absolutely cannot replace that,
And
so
this is, of course, also where, and we're not going to get into this here, one, because we don't have time, and two, because that's not the topic,
yeah,
where layer twos shine. So you have layer twos that actually deploy a Solana VM with Rust on Ethereum, right? And then post their proof to Ethereum. So people who want to play with different execution layers absolutely can do that.
yeah.
Although we've seen that a lot of teams now use commoditized execution layers. Like I think ZK Sync and Scroll just did that, ripped out their own and put somebody else's in.
Yeah, yeah. But Ethereum, as it is, layer one, I think the Ethereum, the execution layer is matured enough to 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 be not replaced anytime soon.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Agreed.
yeah, yeah,
Well, and that's interesting too, just considering where you started with this conversation, that I had not been aware of the whole history, that you guys have been working on this for some time. And so you've got that like maturation history up to this point, and obviously the 1.0 release, which is great to see. So yeah, congrats on that. And thanks for sharing with us all these insights about it, and fielding all these questions too. I think we learned a lot.
yeah, yeah.
Talking about adoption, we now have 6 mature consensus client, including Grandine. Do you have any goals in terms of like adoptions, or like put it in another way? What kind of adoption would you be satisfied with for your client?
Yeah, I think we would be very happy if eventually we help the network um, to reach the state where no client is very close to one third of the share, because now it looks like top three clients, roughly speaking, like a top three clients are really close to one third of the share, and because there is no an accurate way to measure the actual share, then we're actually a bit blind in what are the real numbers in the network. So let's say if we help the network to get to reach the station where there is no client that is very close to one third, then I think we would be very happy with such a result.
Cool. Great. Nice. Good question there. So yeah, I think unless there's any other questions, I think we can wrap things up, and we would be yeah, we want to make sure to mention that there is a POAP, right? We always know that that's coming. So Remy, if we have the slide up, let's give everyone those directions for getting that. A special Grandine community call POAP. And oh, looks like we might have one more question, but anyway.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, I have a kind of a fun question for you, Salius.
Yeah.
With Pectra upcoming, some of the other clients have done fun ASCII art with the merge, like when the change actually happens, when the hard fork goes in on that specific block, there's like, whatever the theme of the fork is, there's some fun ASCII art. Do you guys have any plans to do anything like that?
It's so funny question because I even forgot about such thing. So the team is really small, and we really focus on the super important stuff, like client stability, performance, and so on. And it's so funny to hear this question because I even forgot that such thing is kind of a nice to have thing in the client. So so the answer is no. Unfortunately, we don't have such thing.
Makes total sense. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, I like the ASCII art too, so it's a fun concept. Yes, so let's go make sure we have that POAP information though, Remy. Cool, it's up. Awesome. So the POAP, and it's minted on Arbitrum, and you can get it here using the POAP airship that the information is shown on the screen. So just send your 0.0009 ETH to poap.ethstaker.eth, right? And you should be good to go. It'll mint it to the address that you sent it from. So you can do that on Arbitrum. It also works on Base Optimism and Ethereum mainnet, and that'll mint to you on the Arbitrum layer 2. So excited to have that, and make sure to collect it. I also want to mention before we leave here that the next time that we will have something on this channel is actually pretty soon, on February 24th, for the Pectra Holesky live stream fork upgrade call. So we'll have that. We'll have a bunch of people attending that will be helping educate and commemorate that upgrade and watch it go through actually midway through the call. The plan is to have the call start about 30 minutes before the upgrade goes through. And so we'll watch it go through, and it'll be kind of interesting to have a little bit of before and an after. So yeah, stay tuned for that. And we'll see you all there in a couple days on Monday. But yeah, thanks, Saulius. Great to have you. Thanks for talking about Grandine with us, and we'll see you all next time.
Yeah, cool. Thanks a lot for inviting. It was a pleasure to talk with you guys. Thanks and bye.
Awesome. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks for joining. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye.